Hi, my name is Nancy Young, and welcome to another episode of Your Voice Matters with Nancy Young, a program highlighting the positive voices within our local communities and showing how they're impacting and uplifting our world one person at a time. Now, before we get started, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Today, we will be highlighting your voice through penmanship and purpose. Our guest today is from Tracy, California. Her name is Mary Kennedy-Bracken. May is Stroke Awareness Month. And one of the things that we'll talk in our interview today with Mary Kennedy-Bracken is about a major stroke that she had in 2013 and some signs that led up to that. You need to be aware of some of the symptoms and some of the signs so that you can get the help that you need. So let me tell you about Mary. Mary Kennedy-Bracken has been speaking professionally since 1989. She is a dynamic and thought-provoking leadership coach, motivational, and keynote speaker. As the former CEO, president of the Latham District Chamber of Commerce, she has shared the speaker's platform with such notables as Senator Lois Wolk, Senator Kathleen Galgiani, Martin Luther King III, and many more. As a trailblazer in the city of Lathrop, Mary Kennedy-Bracken was nominated Woman of the Year for the state of California by Senator Lois Wolk of the 5th District. She was also placed in the Library of Congress in 2012 and 2013 as Outstanding Professional. During her tenure as CEO and president of the chamber, she created the first youth chamber in the United States. Through her efforts, the chamber was recognized as Business of the Year. Mary is also the CEO of TYPP, meaning Turn Your Passion into Profit, a speaking institution that was founded on the concept and belief that expressing oneself through effective communication is an essential skill needed in this global society. Mary Kennedy advocates positive change for the betterment of all people. At this time, help me welcome Miss Mary Kennedy-Bracken. Welcome. Thanks for
Thank
joining.
you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So I'm glad that you're here to talk with me. And I'm going to talk to you today about your book that you wrote. And it's called You Will See God's Miracles If Only You Believe. So there's a lot of information about your life in here, from a little girl all the way to really current day. So let's first just go back to what inspired you to write the book.
Well, Nancy, there's a lot of things that went on in my life that encouraged me to write the book. And then watching my grandson is 11 years old now. And I said I wanted to leave a legacy. I wanted him to know some of the things that went on in his grandmother's life and his mother's life. I had a stroke. And when I had a stroke, my daughter kept saying, Mom, you need to write your book. She says, it's time to write your book. And after I had a stroke, I didn't think about writing. Basically, I wanted to get back to normalcy. I wanted to get myself together. And she would say constantly, well, Mom, you need to sit down and take the time to write your book. So I thought about all the time that I spent in my office. That was a few months just putting things together, my manuscript. So then I said, okay, now let me put it all together, read it, and then start my book. But what inspired me is my life experiences, and then watching my grandkids, and then thinking about how much do grandkids know about their grandparents? What are we going to leave them other than finances are good, but to let them know our story. So I decided to put my story together.
There are
Yes.
certain questions I wish I could ask now, even of my father, but he's gone. And so when he was here, there were so many, I was so young. I didn't know some of the things that I should have asked, or I could have asked to know. So that's great that you have left this legacy, not only to help your grandson, but to actually inspire others to have the opportunity to read it like I did. So,
Thank you.
So I want to back all the way up to page 5. And so this, when you were talking about when you were a little girl in the home that you grew up in, you first talked about, being raised by a mother who was a praying mother. So you talked about that, experience and how that helped groom you into the prayer warrior that you are. But then you talk on page 5 about a challenge, and you say, I quote, "It was very difficult for us living at home and feeling defenseless because we didn't have a voice." So you're a very outspoken person right now. So to there, just tell me a little bit about how you felt back then.
Well, in growing up when I was younger, my stepfather wasn't the role model that we would look up to. My stepfather had drinking problem. He would gamble and he would drink. And what hurt me is the same thing that gave me strength. I would watch my mother go through the abuse, his profanity, his arguing with her, just picking fights, just to do it. And the alcohol actually led to most of this. But what was interesting is my mother didn't have a voice. I would look at her and she would cry. She would accept what was going on. And even being a young child, I would tell her, you don't have to accept it. You are who you are. You are who God made you. And at a young age, I would explain things like that to her. And I had a little dog. She always bought us poodles. So I had a little poodle. And it was so funny, Nancy, because what I would do is because I couldn't talk to my parents, I couldn't tell them what to do. I would sit down on the porch and talk to my dog. I would tell my dog what was going on. And if I had a voice, if they would listen to me, some of the things that I would change. But most of all, I felt bad watching my mother go through the things that she was going through. But he would gamble more, he would drink more, so it became worse. And again, my mother had to go through that. She had to endure, and then everybody in the household had to endure that. And so my older brothers and sisters went off to the Midwest. They went to college. And
Right.
so it's just me, my sister, and my brother at home. So we saw that. And at the same time, just watching that, I would say, I'm not going to be like that, or I would never take that. So in times of weakness, it actually made me stronger because I started focusing on my life as I grow up and what I want in my life.
Some people, they fall into that cycle, whereas, they see the abuse and they say, I'm never going to do that. But then they fall into that themselves. But for you, it made you stronger to know exactly what you weren't going to be dealing with, to have,
Right.
to have a peaceful home for your life.
Right. And then to see her hurt Nancy hurt me. It hurt my brothers and sisters, but I think we all take things differently. I looked at it and say, this is not what I'm going to take when I grow up. And then I would look at it and say, how can I help my mother because she doesn't deserve this? But to get out of a situation, you have to believe that you don't deserve to be in that situation. So, but eventually things changed. My stepfather left and life changed. It even surprised her because we had a much happier, a better, more prosperous life. Because she knew when he came home that he was going to be drinking or had been drinking. So she asked me to sleep with her. And so he did. He says, do you want me to leave or do you want me to stay? And she didn't answer and he started counting and we were looking at each other so intense, but I was looking at her not to say anything. I was saying in my heart and my eyes, I will be your strength. I will be that strength that you need. And so he counted to three and she didn't say anything and he packed his bag and he left. Nancy, that was one of the happiest days of my life because I knew my mother would be happy, but she couldn't see it. She couldn't feel it. And shortly thereafter, it's a transition. And shortly thereafter, things changed. God had blessed us. He had opened up opportunities for my mother and my family. So it was a blessing. But a lot of times we hold on to things, and sometimes much too long.
A number of years to where you actually begin to find your voice. And you do describe in there that Sally, it was after your mom had passed. So that when
Yeah.
you first attended a meeting for Toastmasters at work and began to find your voice and your purpose as well. So take us on that journey of how you begin to find your voice.
Okay. You really read my book.
I did every page.
I love it. Well, basically, my mother died in 1988, and I always said she died much too young before she had the opportunity to express herself. Because my mother was pretty shy, she was quiet, and I was just the opposite. But my mother, when she wanted to do something, she would ask me because I would inspire her. But after she passed away, I was working at an electronic company. And then I started taking Toastmaster classes. And one of the co-workers, my co-worker invited me to a Toastmasters class. She says, Mary, you don't have to say anything. All you do is have to sit there and watch. And I said, okay, I will go. Reluctantly, but I said I would go. So I went to Toastmasters, and it was in our conference room at work. And it was about, I want to say about 20 people there. And I walked in, I took a seat, and then they started the Toastmasters program, and they introduced everyone around the table. And then I introduced myself. And then they have a certain segment of it that's called table topics. So they asked me, they said, would you like to try it? And they gave me a table topic. I stood up and I talked about a rabbit. It was so real. And then I just felt it. And I had never expressed myself like that. And it's only 2 minutes, but it seemed like it was about 5 minutes to me. But people started clapping after I spoke. And then I looked around, and then I sat down, and it was several other people that gave table topics as well. And then what was funny is when they gave out the awards in the end, well, I got the award for the best table topic. And I had never gotten an award. So I felt elated. I was excited. And then I said, wow, this is different. And so when we went back to the office, I told the lady, I said, you said I wouldn't have to speak. And she said, but you did so well. She says, I'd like you to go back with me next week. So I said, okay. And I went back the next week, and I spoke, and I won an award. And then I went back the next week, and it was continual. And I was excited about it. But what was so impressive is the president of the company called me up to his office and said, I understand that you're a speaker. People are enjoying your speeches. And I said, I wasn't until now. But he says, you speak very well. He says, people are excited about your positivity. And because he liked it, the boss that I had at that time, she did not like it. She felt that, she says, you're spending more time in Toastmasters than you are working, which that wasn't true. And then she says, you seem to like Toastmasters better than you like doing what you're doing. And I was a trainer at the time. So it was interesting. I said, and that's when I found my voice. I said, I can speak. I felt my mother didn't get the opportunity. And I said, now I'm blessed to speak.
Sometimes when you're finally on your journey to finding yourself, there's going to be somebody along the way that's going to try to stop you.
Absolutely.
But you knew within yourself that was, the beginning of the purpose that was starting to build up before you sat down one day in your meditation. And then you talked about God gave you the name for your company, the company that you're the CEO
Yeah.
of right now. And what is that?
Turn your passion into profit. TYPP. Well, Nancy, my purpose is talking to people, helping people, being a service to people. And it's interesting, we talk about turn your passion into profit. Well, it was 1990 when I created my business. And what was interesting is I was always writing because I was asked to speak at Toastmasters, Rotary clubs, churches, schools. So I was always writing. And I was writing something down, and I ended up in an automobile accident, not paying attention. And so what happened was I had to go to the hospital. And after I left the hospital, I went home and I was praying. I was supposed to be at a function that evening, but I couldn't make it simply because, quite naturally, I was just in an automobile accident. So I was writing. And then I said, God, I said, I'm always praying. I do what you asked. I said, and I'm always trying to make ends meet. I said, what do you want me to do? And this was late at night. And then I heard a voice for the first time. People say if you talk to God, he'll talk back. God talks to you in a whisper. Well, Nancy, this wasn't a whisper. And I heard just as clear and loud, turn your passion into profit. Nancy, I was shocked and I was startled. I jumped up from my chair and I ran down my hall. And then I came back and I sat down and I said, wow. And I said, turn my passion into profit. I said, God, what I like to do is talk. That's all I do is talk. And so the funny thing about it, then I sat down and I started praying and I said, well, that's my passion. So I said, now turn your passion into profit. I have been in Toastmasters. I have won so many awards. I have been in speech contests. I've won so many awards. And I said, Nancy, I had so many awards, I could wallpaper 2 of my walls. And that was from speaking. But the blessing was, it was natural. It would come, like I said, in Toastmasters, I didn't have to write a speech. And what was so interesting is I spoke to Les Brown, the motivational speaker, Mr. Les Brown. And I told him about my business, and he asked me the name of my business. I said, Turn Your Passion into Profit. And he liked the name, it had a buzz. So things just started. And I started building a relationship with him, talking about motivational speaking. So he felt that that was good. And it started from there. But it was just so natural, Nancy. And so I said, sometimes we work at things that's already in us. All we do is have to unleash it and let it out and let it flow. God's got this. We just have to let him handle it.
Right. So was it Les Brown who asked you who knows you? I know
Yes.
it's motivational, and not just who you know, but who
Right.
knows you.
Right.
And
Right.
so,
Exactly.
and I
Right.
found that even when I met you back, I think around 2012, you
Yes.
invited me to the Lathrop Chamber, where you're the CEO at the time. And I feel that even then I had just become elected as a council member. And
Yes.
so, it was a matter of, who knows you? And I remember I was like, okay, Lathrop is not Tracy. And you said, well, you need to come and just connect with people and just mingle and get to know people so people will know you, who you are.
Right.
So, I mean, I just see that how you begin to pass that on, even the lessons you learn to try to help others like little old me.
Because the fact of the matter is, we're always trying to get to know someone else. But if you mention someone's name, who knows that person? And so I always follow that as well. I always wanted to know, to do what I could do to help someone else.
Okay. So there are things that's happened in your life that caused you to lose your voice temporarily. But before we get there, I want to look at some of the miracles and the insights that you garnered over the years. I mean, because the whole theme of the book is you will see God's miracles only if you believe. And so there's been several miracles clearly in your life that you talk about. But let's talk about cancer. I think the title has to do with the 5-day eviction notice that you gave to cancer.
Okay, Nancy, and that was an experience. I was 24 years old at the time, and I went to the doctor. I had a doctor's appointment, and they wanted me to come back. They said that they took X-ray and they saw something, and they wanted me to come back for examination. And so it was just before my daughter's birthday, so I was preparing for her birthday, and I had ordered a cake and everything, and I was preparing for her birthday. So she was 4 years old at the time. So I got the presents and everything, and I took them over to her school. And then I went back to the doctor. But prior to that, I was getting sick and I didn't understand. I thought that at the time I was pregnant, but it ended up being a tumor. And the doctor, I went for my examination and they told me I was okay. But because I got sick, I kept saying, something's wrong, something's wrong. And let me back up a little bit. My mother had called me one day and she says, Mary, she says, someone has told her that one of her children was sick. She said, my oldest sister. And I said, in talking to her, I just felt my body felt warm. And I said, okay, she asked me, could I call her and tell her to go to the doctor and make sure everything's okay? And I said, yeah, I would do that. But I felt it. And when I got off the phone, I said, God, I know it's me. I said, prepare me. And so again, at that time, I thought I was pregnant. So long story short, when I went back to the doctor, they told me that I had a tumor and they said it was cancerous. And they said, you need to come in right away. So what they did is they called my husband. They said, we need to have your wife come in right away. And we need you to bring her in. And we talked to her and she said that she would not come in. So long story short, and then he says, the doctor told him we need you to contact her family. And so we went to the appointment. And so we sat there, but I told my husband, I said, don't call my family, don't call my friends. This is between me and God. So as they were talking to us, the nurse was talking to us, she says, you have cancer and it's traveling through your body. She says, you have to take chemotherapy. And she says, it might cause your hair to come out. It might cause sores in your veins. It might cause nausea. She just was naming a litany of things. So I stood up and I was walking out. And she says, where are you going? My ex-husband was sitting there. I said, tell him, because I'm not going to believe a thing that you said. None of those things are going to happen to me. And they had told me that I had to stay in the hospital for about 2 weeks to make sure the chemotherapy works and the cancer is in remission. So I said, I'll give you a week. What you can't do in a week won't get done. After they gave me the chemotherapy, I said, I will not wear your gowns. So I would get up, I would take a shower, I would curl my hair, Nancy, I would put on my makeup, I would wear my own gown, and then I would walk the halls, praising God, telling people how good God is. I felt that I was only in there to become stronger, to build my relationship with God. So I would walk the halls and they would say, Miss Kennedy, you need to be laying down. You need to be in your bed. And I said, the bed is for people that are sick. I'm not sick. I'm just here to build my relationship with God. So I told them, I said, I'll give you 5 days. And I want to tell you, it was on a Friday. And they called my husband, my ex-husband, and they said, you can come and pick her up. She's either crazy or she's got a lot of faith. I chose the latter. And so they said, the cancer is gone. So after that, I just praised the Lord. That built my faith. And my husband, ex-husband, didn't understand it, but then he saw what was going on. And even the hospital called me. They said it was your attitude, it was your faith that healed you. And they said, we would like you to come in and talk to other patients because they're not as strong as you. 80% of it is your attitude. But I knew when I went in, Nancy, I was coming out, and I was coming out better than I was when I went in.
So we're going to fast forward to a time where you lost your voice temporarily again, a number of years later, and this time with a different husband, your current husband, who was there to help you through this. So I'm going to just go to the part where you were on a gurney, actually in the ambulance on your way going to the second hospital where they could actually treat you. You have been having blood on your brain, bleeding for almost 3 hours at that point. And here you are with a cell phone in your lap, texting people, telling the mayor you can't be at his child wedding the next day. I'm supposed to be at a meeting tonight. So that's just that go-getter in you. So looking at all the purpose that you did. And so tell me about some things that led up to that eventful day in 2013. So that changed your life.
Thank you. Nancy, sometimes we have to listen to our spirit. I normally go to the gym every day, and I'm there it opens at 4. The gym in Shape City opened at 4, and I was there at 10 minutes to 4. It was about 5 faithfuls that were always there. This one morning, Friday morning, I got up as usual. And then I said, no, don't go to the gym today. My spirit, it said, go back to bed. I got back in the bed again. And then I laid there and then I felt guilty and I felt lazy. So I got up, I prepared to go to the gym. So I was there by 4 o'clock and I normally ran 5 miles every day. And so this morning I was chewing gum, and I usually never chew gum, but I put a stick of gum in my mouth when I went into the gym. So I got on the treadmill and I did my run. After I did the treadmill, I went to lift some dumbbells. And so I was lifting dumbbells, and then I was chewing my gum and I kept biting my lip. And then I said, why are you biting your lip? And so I just kept on exercising. And then I kept biting my lip, and and then I said, well, this is not normal. And then I said, go downstairs and look in the mirror and see what's going on. So I went downstairs and I went into the restroom and I looked in the mirror. Nancy, I shocked myself. I looked in the mirror. The left side of my face was drooping. The right side, my lips were 3 sizes larger than their normal size. And it was like unbelievable to me. So I went to the restroom, just like it's going to disappear. I'm not seeing what I'm seeing. So then I came out And I looked in the mirror again, and my face was still drooping and my lips were big. And normally people panic, they call 911, scream, whatever, let someone know what's going on. I was very calm and I said, God, what do you want me to do? And my answer was, take yourself to the hospital. I got in my car. I drove, the hospital was only about a half a mile away. I drove myself to the hospital, parked my car, walked into the emergency. And then as I was going to the receptionist desk, she said, ma'am, can I help you? And I went, "Arr." So then she called on a loudspeaker for the doctor. A couple of doctors came and a couple of nurses came. And the doctor said, he looked at me and then he said, it looks like Bell palsy. He says, give her a couple of hours, it'll clear up. And then he says, very smart. And I felt that this was God induced. He says, well, let me take an x-ray just in case. He took an x-ray. And then he told them to put me in a room. So they put me in a room, and I did enough gestures to have them call my husband before he got on the H train. So my husband came to the hospital. They were outside of my bed, and the doctor said, would you like to see her x-rays? And he said, yes. So he looked at the x-rays. Now they're right outside of my bed. And he says, she has a bleeding, her brain is bleeding. And the bleeding area is about the size of an egg. And my husband actually got on the phone to call my family to let them know. And so he says, we can't treat her here. We're trying to find a hospital that we could take her to. And we're trying very diligently. And then a nurse came in the room. And the nurse said, you're worse off than you will ever know. And then I said, God, I'm better off than they will ever know. And then shortly they got me to the hospital. Well, the ambulance came in, a bed was available. So they took me 40 miles away. So in all, my brain bled for 3.5 hours. So they pushed me into the hospital, and there was a group of doctors and nurses. And they kept saying, is that her? Is that her? And the doctor says, yes. And he came over to me and he says, I understand that you drove yourself to the hospital. And I said, yes. He says, when you have a stroke, you call 911. And he says, but if you had not drove yourself to the hospital, you wouldn't be here today. And the doctor told me I had to stay in for a while, but in a couple of days, 3 days, it was Christmas. And I had bought my grandson a train, a real train. So I wanted to see him open his gift. And the doctor said that I needed speech therapy. I needed therapy for my legs. And so I asked him, could I go home to watch my grandson open his gift? And he says, if I allow you to go home for Christmas, would you come back after that? And Nancy, this is just a sassiness in me. I said, once I leave this joint, I'm never coming back. And so he had to laugh too. But he says, I want you to take therapy, get into therapy right away as soon as you leave here. And I said, I will. I promise I will. And Nancy, after that, I mean, I set up everything, therapy, speech therapy, um, outpatient therapy for my legs. And then, lo and behold, my husband didn't renew the insurance. So that meant we had to wait a while before everything actually started. So at home, what I was doing is I was working with myself. I would get up and I would exercise. But the thing people always talked about cell phones, I couldn't speak well. You couldn't hear, you couldn't really understand what I was saying. So what I did every morning at 4 o'clock, I took my cell phone and then I practiced phonics every day. I started just practicing words like you would do being a baby or English as a second language. And then I would listen to myself. But what I did is I recorded it every day so I can hear my progress. And then I would have to do vowel sounds and exercise my mouth. But what people take for granted is what God has given us. He's given us freedom to smile. He's given us freedom to speak, to laugh. Nancy, I could not wink my eye for 8 months. I could not, and the way that I knew I could, my facial expressions, actually, I could not do. But my grandson winked at me one time. I used to try to move my eyes and couldn't. He winked at me one time and I thought it was so cute. And I went to wink back and I could. That was my hallelujah shouting moment because I could do it. Then I realized how many things we take for granted. You laugh, you talk, you expect to do it. But when those things are taken away from you and to have to learn how to do what is natural, I tell you, it really gave me faith, gave me confidence and trust in God. So,
So that a very huge change for your life. But
oh,
I'm
yeah,
sure that even before writing this book, it gave you time to evaluate your life, because I think sometimes we can walk in our purpose, but then overextend ourselves. And
yes,
so overextending, because at that time, you were not only the CEO of the Lathrop Chamber, you were also the president of the Rotary Club, which
yeah,
was just a lot on you. Your day started super early, not just with the exercise, but then going to the Sunrise Rotary, and then the chamber as well. So, everything just came crashing at one time to help
right,
reset, to really help reset your life to, and you talked about the phonics and the things, the steps that you did to really rehabilitate your own self, to get,
right.
and then to be able to smile again, to be able to wink. And then you got a call. You got a call from a magazine. So tell me about that.
Yeah, that was interesting. I went back to work. Financially, I needed to go back to work. And then, too, what was happening, Nancy, is when I was home from the hospital, people were still calling me from the chambers. Businesses were calling, things that needed to happen to fall in place didn't quite fall in place. So I was getting a lot of calls. It was so many things. I was juggling so many things. And you're right, I had a busy schedule. My day started at 4 o'clock in the morning at the gym. And then in the evening, after everything was said and done with the chambers, it was activities that I had to attend. So, but I'm proud to say that I've learned that you have to learn how to say no. When you feel that you're a servant, you tend to do a lot of things and you want to help people. That's a good thing. But when your plate starts running over, you have to learn how to say no. And so that's the problem that I had. I didn't know how to say no. But I'm proud to say that I was the first woman CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, Lathrop District Chamber of Commerce. I was the first African American CEO of the Lathrop Chamber of Commerce. And through my experiences, we won the Rosa Parks Award 6 months after being at the chamber. Then the first year, I was nominated as Woman of the Year for the state of California. And then after that, I was in the Library of Congress for Outstanding Professional. But yes, the magazine, is I received a call. And what was interesting is, so they asked me, could they do an article on me? And I said, yes, that's fine. Matter of fact, when we set it up, we were remodeling the chamber. So the editor actually, we were outside and I was talking to him and my grandson was running around playing and we were talking and he asked me questions about my health, the chambers, and I just answered the questions. They called me a couple of days later. We were had a chamber function and they were taking pictures and he says, we're going to put you on the cover. And I couldn't believe that. He says, we're going to put you on the cover because of your recovery. It's a lesson to other people that if you believe and you work hard enough, you can recover faster. But they spoke about my life in the stroke in the magazine. And it was really, matter of fact, I have one on my wall, but it was truly a blessing to me because it helped me. It explained what I was going through. So when people read it, they understood. But I just have the tenacity to bounce back. But all of this has been a blessing in disguise because it's taught me and it's made me stronger. And in the Bible, it says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen.
Your last chapter in the book is only one page, and it's chapter 10, and it says, I'm still here. And so I read that chapter a few times just because it's one page, but still, your story is still being written because you're still here. You're still here to talk about it. You're still here to live, to write new chapters in your life. That's really just the message to give, to lessons learned, to believe, to have faith. And so even though I would say also to pay attention to your body, as you say, because
Okay.
a number of years before you had that TIA, that mini
Right.
stroke. And so, but you know, a lot of times we'll get little warning signs for different things in our lives. We could be overdoing things, but not really stop and reevaluate, but just continue to accelerate. And everybody's not so fortunate to recover because, as you said, when you were in the hospital with the stroke, and you told the people, because you didn't mention this today, but in the book, you told the nurses you want to get up and walk. And they said,
Oh yeah.
nobody on this floor walks. And then I'm trying to get better here. You said, as you look at people in their rooms as you were passing by, you know, it was dismal, but for you, you were determined, that you knew that you had to keep moving, that you weren't going to just lay there and succumb. And I think that's the message in life. We can't just lay back and succumb to whatever
Right.
comes to try to destroy us, whether it's our body trying to come against us or whether it's people like your former boss, you know, tried to discourage you. But you just keep going. When you find your voice and you find your purpose, even though things try to take it back, you push yourself to
Amen.
I just sat back. You know what? We don't have the insurance for it. Oh well. But no, you were determined to get back, and you're creative in doing that yourself. So I applaud you, and I am honored to know you. And so thank you so much for talking with me today.
Well, thank you. And Nancy, I'm honored to know you.
Again, thank you, Mary Kennedy-Bracken, for being our guest today and sharing how your voice is truly making a difference today, and even how finding your voice can help find your purpose in life. Now, if you'd like more information of how to get in touch with Mary Kennedy-Bracken or would like to get your own copy of her book today, go ahead and see the information on the screen below. Now, if you've enjoyed this programming, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you again for joining us for another episode of Your Voice Matters with Nancy Young. And until next time, remember, your voice matters. If you have something positive to share and you would like your voice to be highlighted on Your Voice Matters with Nancy Young, please contact me at YVMwithNancy@gmail.com. And if you've enjoyed this programming, please hit the subscribe button right now. Thank you.